Hey everybody, it's Professor Snart here. Not feeling 100%, so my voice is a little on the rough side, so I'm going to try to keep this relatively short for my benefit, maybe for yours as well. Just to keep us on track, you know, the usual kind of check-in here. Taking a look at due dates, I'm recording this on Thursday, so we are looking at the end of, the main work for our significant objects assignment. I'd said in an earlier video, it's one of my favorite writing exercises that we do just because of the quirky things that people find and the interesting backstories that people develop. Hopefully you're finding it kind of an interesting writing exercise as well. It's also our first test of using Google Docs to compose or at least finalize our writing pieces and then posting that URL into a discussion board, setting the document so the sharing is set so that people can comment and not just view the document. We want it, like, if not editable, then at least open for comment from other people. So we have that initial posting then, so your significant objects piece is done, and the URL is posted to the discussion board, including your picture in there, not your picture, but the picture of the significant object. And then we have our turnaround time. It's sort of like a micro workshop here, where your job here now is to go into each of the documents that's been posted for your group on time and the sharing settings are correct, and then get in there and provide some feedback. So it's not a bad time to take a look at how the workshops work, just to remind yourself how to provide feedback area. Gives you some tools, strategies for formulating questions or what kinds of things to look for. So it's partly your reaction as a reader. It's partly maybe catching typos or grammar things, but we really want it to be more higher order than that. So we're finding things that are both positive, but also areas that might be improved if the writer ever chose to return to this and do revisions. But the more grounded and specific we can be, the better. So we really don't want a whole bunch of generic things like, this is great, I was confused. Those are good starting places, but like, why is this great? And why are you confused? Or what's the suggestion for making this better? So the commenting part is, like I said before, really for me, like the most important and valuable part of the whole experience here. So you're learning some strategies, you're getting to implement those in your own writing, but it's the feedback that you get from, classmates, group members, not even from me, but from that group of readers, I should say, that I think is really most valuable. And that's again why a large portion of the grade, it's really not about, is the writing great? I mean, clearly we sort of want to head that direction, but it's more, did you invest some time, effort to understand the assignment and create something that clearly looks worked on and not just sort of slapped together the night before? But really, the big part of it is, did you invest time in the feedback? And as you'll discover, if you can't sort of imagine it already, when you look back into your document that you composed and you see feedback there, and of course when I look at it and see the feedback that's been given, it's pretty obvious. There's not a lot of gray area between really meaningful, constructive feedback throughout a document and just a couple notes here and there because I read this one time through and, oh, here's what I think. Not great. Okay. So that brings us, though, past our significant objects assignment into our first workshop. Again, one of the most important pieces of our course. So a little reminder then about the whole Google Docs situation and setting up the sharing. So it's the way that we want it, either edit or comment at least, we need so that people can get into that. The assignment, like I've looked at before, is actually fairly straightforward. Just write a short story. There's no requirement for subject length necessarily, or not subject length, subject. There is kind of a length guideline here. We want your best effort for having a story that's more or less complete, beginning, middle, and end. So you don't really want to bring something into workshop like, how should I end this? Even if you know that the ending isn't strong, you can, point to that. But really do try to have something that is put together, beginning, middle, end. And the 2,500 words or less is really just so we don't have things that are so long, and I hardly ever run into this unless people basically use stuff that they've written like years ago, which kind of defeats the purpose here. Just, for practicality's sake, so that people aren't trying to deal with half of a novel or a 25,000 word thing, let alone 2,500. So not a lot of guidelines here as far as requirements, other than, again, paying attention to those rules of creative writing we've looked at, some of the vocab that might have emerged from earlier units about plot, our discussion of, right, the way a plot sort of works with exposition, rising action, a climactic event, that denouement or falling action. We want to think about characters, right, complex characters versus simple characters, major versus minor, the interaction, attention to language, just that we're taking care with the writing of this thing. We're not just slapping it together or trying to get some generic point across, and all that stuff. And again, it's very much an opportunity for you to experiment, to take some risks, to take some chances, try things that you haven't tried before. That's again why so little of the grade is tied to, is this a great story? Is it not a great story? Really more about investment of time and effort, and then of course that whole feedback part. Okay, so you'll see the discussion board set up with some groups pre-made. I think I've created threads, but I'm going to double check myself here. I have. So you'll see your name, find your thread here, go into it, reply to my main post once you're ready with your document URL set for sharing, right? So again, due date wise, it's the usual turnaround from the tail end of this into our first workshop due date and then that feedback due date. But again, I've encouraged people to be thinking about this short story well in advance of now, basically. So if you're starting from scratch, well, that's where you're starting from. If you're not, then that gives you a little bit of a leg up, at least as far as if you have an idea, if you've sketched something out. And again, once you're posting here, we're not expecting a perfectly polished work that you're not open to making changes to, but it does need to suggest that there's been some thought into it, some efforts at revision, not just basic editing. And let's aim for as complete as possible, beginning, middle, and end, even if we know that not all of those are as strong as they could be. One thing that you could do if you want to, you're not required to, but when you go into the Unit 6 discussion board to post the URL for your short story, when you do that post, you could always go in and addition to the URL, of course, you could write a note to your readers about an area that you had questions about or really wanted some intensive feedback about. So you can kind of guide your readers that way if you want to. All right, so I look forward to reading everybody's significant object and then getting into our short story workshop. And as always, if you have questions, concerns, especially as we get towards this workshop, you can always be in touch with me and we can, go back and forth by email, meet in person, meet virtually in real time, whatever works for you.